What's up, y'all? My name is Andre Hopkins, also known as Entree Interview, and today I had the honor and privilege to interview Chobra, a former VCT caster and current streamer for Nongshim Red Force, about his time in casting, his time in the esports industry in general, and his outlook on the 2026 season. I hope y'all enjoy. What's up, everybody? I'm Entree Hopkins, and I'm here with Chobra. Chobra, how are you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me.
It's glad. I'm happy to have you here, So, I'm just going to hop right into it. My first question for you would be,
Let's do it.
how long have you just been casting? I mean, you've had a pretty long career. So, how long have you been at it?
Yeah, so I started casting in 2012, so a little over the 13-year mark now, nearing the 15, the big 15. So it's been a long time. Obviously, I wasn't casting throughout because for me, I've kind of hopped around. I would like to say pretty much almost every aspect of like an esports production, right? So I've been on the producer end. I've been on the kind of like social media marketing end. Back when it was much earlier days and when Korea didn't have much of a global presence. I've been on the business end a little bit as well. So I've at least like touched upon the different facets. So I've hopped around, but casting and hosting, on stage and on camera presence has always been kind of part of that journey all throughout. And then obviously most recently was still casting Valorant as well. So yeah, just about a little over 13 years.
I mean, pretty long tenured career. It's pretty impressive. What changes when moving from like a production, social media to being in front of the camera with casting?
I mean it's very different, but at the same time, obviously your goals are the same. At the end of the day, you want to deliver a great show and then engage the fandom more or less. The biggest difference would be that, especially for like production itself, is production. You have to basically lay out the table perfectly for the casters, right? The casters or the hosts should really. Yes, obviously you want talented people who can, add on their own flair or, bring something new, be able to deal with things live. But you want it to be as meticulously set up as possible so that the people who are on stage or camera are actually literally free to do as, they need to or as they wish. Because, let's say you miss out, like this comes down to like timings, really nitty gritty stuff of, all right, we're going to spend exactly this many seconds on this shot, moving on to the next thing. Or, this game, has these things where the match can extend from anywhere from like 15 minutes to, 45 minutes. It's like, okay, what do we do? How do we compensate for that in between for different segments, things like that. So it's a lot more logistical planning. People think production is, I just have cool ideas and I can do it. And that's important. You want a creative side of it, but you also, even if you're the creative aspect of a production team, you still need some sense of, logistics. Whereas when it's on camera, it is much more about the preparation is different because you want to be prepared for anything. So it's a little bit different, right? Production is I'm preparing for everything, and then on camera is I'm prepared for anything. So if anything comes up, I'm able to adapt to it. I'm able to go, with the flow and not make a fuss of it during. You can always come back to feedback afterwards, and always being able to move onward and think of, okay, well, how do I bring this back to where we need to go, and what we're trying to deliver.
Definitely makes sense. I never thought about how like meticulous the timings could be. If you get a minute too long, everything can get thrown off schedule. Yeah, most definitely. So, do you have a favorite game all time you've casted? Anything in particular?
That I've casted?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a tough question. But at this point, it will probably be Valorant. Just because I grew up, so my career started with League of Legends and then StarCraft 2, interviewing and translating in StarCraft 2. So people, like to think that, that makes sense, like Korea's always been big in StarCraft, even if he grew up in America, like I'm sure he grew up watching it, and that's true, and League of Legends as well. And I liked League of Legends, but I actually grew up more playing Battlefields, Call of Duties, things like that. So I've always wanted to take part in a FPS cast, but back in the day, Korea was always playing its own versions, so to speak, right? The CS copies. So it was never global while I was working in Korea. And then obviously when it comes to something like Counter-Strike, you already have so many people, who are doing it so well, who grew up with that game. Because I didn't grow up with tac shooters, I grew up with more, those arcade shooters and things like that. So it was always tough for me. And I've always, back when I worked at OGN in Korea beforehand, I used to always tell them, like, if Korea ever is playing the same FPS game as the rest of the world. Like, I want to be the one to cast it. Like, I want to cast it in English. I want to try my hand at it. So it never came around. Valorant, finally, kind of that game that has connected more of, I would say, the East with the West when it comes to attack FPS. So I would have to say that, yeah, that is probably my favorite.
Yeah, because in a game like CS, I mean, Asia really is pretty far behind. You have teams nowadays like Tyloo, Mongols, who are pretty big.
Sure.
But back in the day, yeah, as far as I know, I'm not a big CS head, but it was always pretty far. They always drag pretty far behind of, European and Western teams.
Yeah.
Do you have a personal favorite moment that you've personally casted where you had something and you're like, wow, that was really good?
I tend to hold myself to maybe sometimes too high of a standard that I don't kind of hold on to a lot. I don't like to. I always try to nitpick my own casts when I monitor them instead of holding on to good moments. But I will say overall, I think one of the ones where I was like, you know what, I can be satisfied with this. Like, I think I did the best I could, given everything I had.
Yeah.
Was Ascension 2023 for Pacific back at Bangkok. I was casting the semifinals, and I got to the match with, I want to say it was Scars and, I actually don't remember who was on the other side. Scars ended up winning. It might have been Nouse. But that one I was very happy with because I felt like I was able to kind of ride the atmosphere well enough, even though obviously, in the venue it was in Thai, but still being able to kind of deliver that same atmosphere that we had live to the rest of the audience. And then also still keep up the whole idea of that was like the first Ascension. This is such a big deal, right? Yeah. These players, one of these teams is finally going to be able to make it to tier 1, things like that. So yeah, I was pretty happy with that just match overall, that one specific match overall, where I felt like I was in good condition. Things kind of lined up, and I was able to deliver what I wanted. And during that cast, I had gone back to doing a little bit more play-by-play, because before when we were in Pacific, I would focus a lot just in analysis, but we kind of talked through things and just given the importance of that event. So we kind of swapped, not like entirely, but shifted weights a little bit into who's leaning into more into what. And I went back to my original roots of play-by-play and trying to deliver that atmosphere a bit more. And I felt like I was pretty happy with that one.
Okay, that definitely makes a lot of sense. I mean, yeah, I've been watching since I think 2022, and you always stood out to me, as a great caster. Yeah, especially like Ascension. I think that's where I first heard you, was back in Ascension 2023, probably 24, around that time. So, do you have a favorite partner you've casted with?
Not really, but that's more so a result of in Pacific up until this year. When I was still casting with Pacific, we always had rotating casts, right? And I think sometimes I actually think back and I wonder if I didn't do myself enough of a favor, because given my experience casting both play-by-play and analysis on different games and different genres, and working with so many different people, working on the production side, I was always very flexible, and I actually don't feel bad saying that I was probably the most flexible in terms of like, I can cast with anybody. It may not always be the best, but like, we'll get through it. I won't have any issues. I won't kind of stumble over my words or feel that it's awkward, right? I'll just say, okay, well, you were good at this, I can cover the other side. Like, I can always cover the other side. But sometimes I wonder if I did myself a disservice there, because that does mean, like you kind of indicated with the question, I ended up not really ever being able to at least fight for building chemistry with any, specific person. That also just means that, I was also always kind of hopping back and forth, and not really being able to build just one specific side. So unfortunately not. And this has kind of been the same in different games too, where I'm either kind of filling in for a season, or it's always kind of a rotating thing, or it's mostly just international events where you get a pool of people and you're all rotating around. It's only the last couple years, I would say, that most games have now settled into like, oh, it actually is good to have everyone have relatively fixed pairs, because you can build chemistry. So the older days, I guess, wasn't always like that.
Yeah, because I was gonna say something like I feel like it would make more sense to have dedicated, this is the person you're casting with every single game, all the time, because like you said, build chemistry, you guys can work off each other much easier that way. Do you have any tips for someone who is trying to get into your position, esports casting? What would you tell them?
I would say that aside from all the obvious stuff, like all the basics, super basics, I think it's important to always kind of keep an open mind about where you're getting your, I guess, experience from, or at least your knowledge from when it comes to casting. Like people, I think the biggest mistake people make is they watch other people who are casting your game, which is good. Like you obviously need that, but if you focus only on that, what'll end up happening is you will always be a worse version of who you're watching, right?
Yeah,
because you're unconsciously you're just picking up on their habits, and everybody does this. Like even like for me too, you can actually sometimes tell whose casts I've monitored a lot recently because I'll pick up on their habits and then I'll use it, and I'll use like the same words or whatever. So what I notice a lot is people, a lot of times I think people get into casting, or they want to get into casting because they were impressed or they were really moved by somebody they watched or somebody they heard, and they're like, okay, I want to be like that, and that's good. But then you only focus on that, and you're only picking up their habits. Whereas I think it's important to the obvious parallel is sports casters, right? Traditional sports broadcasts. I think there's say what you will about like old heads versus this is the new age of media and things like that, but I think there's value in something that's been going on for much longer and has been built up, right? There are things to pick up from there. But I would also think like talk show hosts, documentaries, things like that, where it is somebody telling a very different story, and then and that's how you diversify your own knowledge base, your own vernacular, things like that. And I think that's very important to just know that I want to be picking up media from different sources. I also probably want to experience as many different things. And I say this as someone who's very introverted, and I'm not very adventurous to begin with. But, even if you're not going out and, I don't know, traveling to an unknown country or like skydiving or whatever, even if it's just like meeting different people, observing different people, right? Sitting at a cafe, observing different people, things like that really help you adjust to the different scenarios that come up. Think of different ways to express the different scenarios that come up. And I think that's very, very crucial.
Yeah, because I think a lot can be learned from looking back at the past, old casters, and like you said, even sports broadcast, football, basketball, and picking up on things they do, but still having it be you. You don't want to just be a carbon copy of somebody else.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that definitely makes sense. So I was going to say, moving to the more VCT, side of things, do you have a personal moment that's like the craziest thing you've seen, where it made you like an actual visceral reaction watching a game?
The one that sticks to me most somewhat recently would be the RRQ Jenkins showstopper ace. Well, the showstopper didn't get the ace, but the ace in overtime against Nongshim Red Force, right? Just because the meme is always the showstopper doesn't hit. Obviously they were seized, but also the combination of the seize and it's overtime and all of that together. And then back then I wasn't partnered with Nongshim Red Force yet, but I was a fan of both teams, so I was also emotionally invested into that moment. And that one I was watching from home. I believe Seth and Clinton were casting that, but it was just one of those moments that's like, when is this going to happen again, right? That's the type of combo you're not planning for. It happens in the moment. And it was overtime, it was kickoff, and it's the Ascension team. So that one sticks to me a lot. There's probably other ones just in general, or even if it's like, several rounds or just the overall like finals of a certain match. But yeah, I would have to say that one stuck with me the most in 2025.
I think the two biggest ones for me personally would have to be the 11-1 comeback. That's the iconic one, Energy versus Fnatic. That was absurd. And also the Boom Nongshim Ascension game with the, was it 0.02 on the defuse?
Something like that, yeah.
That I remember that day I was going to the Red Bull home grounds. And I got up early and I saw the game. I was like, it's still on. It was on when I went to bed. And I saw it was 15-15. I'm like, I have to watch the end of this game. I can't miss this. And I saw it live, and I'm so happy I did because, I don't have any words. It was one of the craziest games I've ever seen. And that's when I became, I was such a fan of Nongshim and Boom after that.
Yeah, that match actually, it's funny because most people will always talk about the ending, right? The, 0.0 whatever, and then the, the brim hold from showers. But the moment that always stuck with me the most in that match was when it was still in overtime. I think it was like the first or second round of overtime where it's them, Nongshim, holding the post plant. and they're on A site, and it's like a 3v5, and Francis goes out into showers and tells Ivy to block him out of the site with the deadlock wall,
Okay,
and just kind of baiting them in. Yeah, but it's just this, this total gamble of like, this is the only way we win. And I think that was one of those moments where I was like, okay, that player and this team is super special, because to make that decision in that moment where it's like your career is on the line, not even tournament life, like your career is on the line, that was so crazy to me. So that is, I mean, that match overall just delivered so many moments.
I mean, what a crazy call to make, to be like, just wall me off. If this doesn't work, I mean, we got to try some. Something's going to have to work. I mean, just think about that game. It's shocking. Do you think there's a team or player going into this year that's being severely underrated, not being looked at enough, just flying under the radar?
In Pacific, I don't think so. I don't think there's any team that's being underrated. I think most people are pretty excited about any of the changes or any of the players that are carrying on, from last year. Let's see, any rookies, Hyunmin, obviously the shining example. I think Pacific's been in a pretty good spot where you're relatively invested or excited enough about the overall skill level of the region, and at least you always have like one or two individuals on every team that you're able to get excited about. That I don't think there's any one team that's severely being underrated, because in the past it would have been, well, not even underrated. The team that no one would get excited for would be DFM, right? Like DFM was like, okay, you're never getting wins. Like that's a shame. But even them, they were able to show like, okay, they've at least figured out a little bit of, okay, we know what it feels like to get those wins now. So I don't think, I think actually most teams or like roster moves reports are being fairly well rated. The only thing I would say is I do wonder if people are, and me myself included, are going to still end up sleeping on Gen G, regardless of who rounds out their roster, just because, yes, it's a pretty big change, but also you still have such a strong core, right? You've still got Texture, right? You still got Karon, who was able to kind of get back into his form a little bit towards the end of the year. You still have the main coaching staff of Solo and HSK. And I don't know. I think people might be a little bit overreactionary of like, whoa, these are really big changes. Like, I don't know about Gen G. And yes, they faltered a little bit this year, but I think they'll still always be competitive, right? And be like, well, they can still contend for an international. Yeah. So that might be one team. But Pacific's in a good spot. I can't really speak so much for Americas and EMEA just because I have my own thoughts, but I don't exactly know how people are gauging all the different moves. But in Pacific, it's been pretty good.
Yeah, I feel like with Gen G, I feel like as long as you have two of the three of Munchkin, Texture, Karon, and then you have Solo and HSK, I think they're always a contender. You can't just count them out. I mean, they've been so consistent for so long. I mean, you can't just. I really want to see May at a global soon. I mean, he's absolutely insane. I think everybody wants to see that, though. If you watch Pacific, you want to see May, and I think I'm excited to see RRQ, even though they lost Ewok. I'm very excited to see how they perform this year. I was a fan of RRQ in like 2023 because I feel like they were always that under the radar team. So I hope to see them do some good stuff this year. Do you have a favorite player all time for you personally to watch? That like when you see them, you're excited to actually go out there and see how they perform?
It's funny to say all time because generally I always talk about this. The whole meme, well, I guess it's not a meme. It's kind of true, of me being a fan of RRQ. Was so weird to me as well because I've never really been like a fan of any team or any artist or anything like that. Like I like artists, but I don't follow them. I'm not waiting for the next movie release of a director or anything like that. So it was I found it kind of interesting where I was like, well, this is a new feeling. Like I kind of want to watch all of their games and like want to root for them. Like it's interesting. But therefore, I didn't really, I had players that I was like, oh, this player is cool. Like I'm excited to see where they go. But the first player that I would say where I'm like, in fact, 2025 brought me 3 players where I'm like, I am rooting for these guys actively. I am excited for them, and whichever roster they may end up moving to, I would want to see what they do. Like I would want to kind of follow their career even more actively. Would be Hyunmin was kind of the first one. I was mesmerized by what he was doing right in kickoff, and I was like, okay, this guy's something special. The next would be Kayak on Fnatic.
Yep.
And then, funny enough, those two are rookies, but the third is Crashies, now still on Fnatic. Yeah, and Crashies is more a case of, there was so much doubt around him after last year's
Yeah.
career that I was like, wait, this is ridiculous. Like, come on, this guy's so good. Like, how are people doubting this guy? This is insane. And just more as a retaliation to that, that
Yeah.
narrative of like, I don't know if he can do it. I was like, no, this guy's gonna do something on Fnatic, and then I started really being invested. But I think I like the old top initiators. I think I like the people who used to play initiators in the old days and how they would work around the game. So I was really rooting for Crashies, and I'm so glad that they had still a very successful year. Obviously, they would have liked to lift the trophy, but I was very, very happy to follow their overall trajectory this year.
Yeah, because I think there's so much hate around Crashies going into last year. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he has been in Tier 1 for, before that, 4 years. It's not like he's just going to randomly be terrible now. I mean, I completely agree with you on that. At least that front of the, it was bizarre to me.
I mean, we had people have been longing for Leo to come back, and I think it's just this conglomerate of, well, a lot of people consider Leo the best in the world, so at some point nobody can really compare to that excitement. But also I was like, I would have never thought of it myself, but actually to me it was like, okay, actually this makes sense. This is probably the guy who is just different enough but still close enough that he's not being directly compared at the end of the day. But he's going to bring in his own, knowledge, flavor, experience, etc. to Fnatic. And hey, it worked out. They're continuing on next year, so I'm excited.
I think it was a good signing too, just purely off of experience. I mean, you get a guy in there, you don't have to teach him how to play the game the Fnatic's way. He can just insert in, and he's got it figured out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Speaking of Leo, I hope to see him come back soon. I mean, he was so great, and then just sucks to see him gone for this long. I hope he can get back soon.
We'll see. It sounds like it's probably just on the back burner even for him now at some point. But
no one really knows as far as I know.
Yeah, regardless, hopefully he, he's able to. I think he'll be fine, just given how good he was at the game, right? No matter what he finds to do. So hopefully he's able to get enough to, well enough health that he can do what he wants. But obviously, as fans, we would like to see him in a game again someday.
Yeah, most definitely. And then for my last question, what is your favorite underdog run of all time? I mean, we've had Wolves in Toronto, we had Zeta, and I believe 2022. There's a lot of really good ones.
Underdog run of all time. Wow, that's a good question. I haven't had that asked a lot. My underdog run of all time stuff, but I think I will have to go with the Zeta one. The Zeta one kind of hurts because I was casting that event on the Korean broadcast. So obviously we were all, very big on DRX, and DRX, it was rough. It was rough. And the funny thing is we kind of knew, going into that match, we were like, this Zeta run is not normal. We were like, this is worrying. Yeah. So that one hurt. But I would say I actually liked the Wolves run a lot. I liked the Wolves run a lot just because the Zeta run was special because it was kind of the first of its kind, like a totally unexpected, team to really make a run. And I guess Zeta kind of opened the gates for underdog runs in Valorant, like internationals. So that was very cool. But I would say that the Wolves one was special because we had now come to a point where I think 2020-25 was a pretty big deal for Valorant, where more players and teams now understood how important the fan interaction was, how important it was to build a brand and character, the trash talking, the taunting, the dancing, all of that. So you had CFAT BB, who was able to really take that in and be like, okay, this is what I need to do as a leader for this team to get the fans here excited for an unknown team, right? And I think he embodied that very well. The interviews were so good. Also just, kind of an upstanding character, hanging out and getting friendly with all the other competitors. Then you had the TMV side of it, where a bunch of us were, just memeing on him for rooting for this team just because of the football team. And then, lo and behold, he's actually doing the best out of all of us who are rooting for certain teams.
But that was just a crazy run they went on. I mean,
yeah, it was. It was just such a perfect storm of fun, but also impressive. And you look at the way they play, it was like, okay, they actually figured out a good way to target a lot of these other teams and what they had prepared coming into this event. So I think it was good. I also liked it because even though EDG had won, people still always, kind of underrate, or I guess maybe sometimes fairly rate China as the lowest region, the least competitive, and then they came in and they said, no, it's still possible. We can still make these runs. I think the Wolves one, funny enough, earlier I said Zeta kind of opened up the gates to underdog runs and internationals, but that's probably not entirely fair because the true original would actually be Crew back at the original champions. Yeah. Yes. And that one, you know what? I oftentimes forget about it, but that one I was in it. Like I was yelling Vamos with them, like I was excited for that team. Like that was one heck of a run as well. So the Crew run and then the Wolves, it's probably those. The first one and then the most recent.
Yeah, I wasn't around during that time. I wasn't like a Valorant fan, but I've heard of the stories of that Crew. I also know if you consider like Paper X going into Toronto and underdogs run, I think that would also count.
Yeah, I mean, I have no qualms if somebody counts that as an underdog run. I think in retrospect, I don't count it as big of an underdog run just because it's like, no matter how bad they looked, they will always still be relatively competitive, right?
Yeah.
So but at the time, I mean, I was down on them. I didn't think they were going to make it to Toronto. So I totally have no problems if any fans are like, no, I think, the Paper X underdog run. I'm like, that's fair. I wouldn't put it at the, same, I guess, kind of curve of like Wolves or Zeta, but I would count that as well. I mean, technically the EDG Champions run would be a bit of an underdog run as well. So there's quite a few, but storyline, like unknown, basically 0 to hero type beats would be, the Crews, the Zetas, and then the Wolves.
So I remember I was watching Plat Chat. I was on a walk watching Plat Chat, hearing Sleepy be like track by track. I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is not gonna happen. They're not even going to qualify for the tournament. There's no way. And they qualified, and I was like, wait a minute here. You might be onto something.
Yeah.
But it was too late to hop on the train. I'd missed it.
No, yeah, I committed to staying off the train, and I regret it. But also, he had insider knowledge, so I'm fine with it.
It was unfair. We were at a disadvantage. We didn't know.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just was like, there's no way. They started what? 0-3 that stage. I was like, no, they're not even going to qualify.
Yep.
And he's like, no, they're going to do it. I'm like, okay. And then, man, he was right. So I think that'll be all I have for you. Do you have any socials you'd like to link? Where can we find you at?
Yeah, you can find me during the off season. I'm streaming pretty regularly, as much as I can. I'm actually trying to right now not really rush, but finish my Baldur's Gate 3 playthrough because I started it last year during the off season. I did not realize, by the way, that this game was I knew it was big, but I grew up playing a lot of JRPGs. I was like, yeah, like 100 hours, and then I was at 100 hours last year during the off season. And then we had to put it down because VCT started again, and I was like, I can't do this game. So we're trying to finish that. I'll be watching Game Changers Championship. I'll be watching and following along the SVL in Korea during the off season. So you can find me on my streams at Will Chobra everywhere: Twitch, YouTube, X, Blue Sky. Although I don't use the rest of social media that much. Instagram. Yeah, it's all the same. Will Chobra everywhere, and then you'll find me wherever you go during the off season.
All right, quick last question, though. Who do you have winning Game Changers?
Listen, I haven't finished my research yet at the time of this interview, but I'm gonna go with one of the Brazilian teams. You got to give me at least a little slack there.
I'll go MIBR going on a run. MIBR, we're going all the way, baby. We're gonna win. Yeah,
I think MIBR could do it. Yeah, no, I'm with that. One of the Brazilian teams.
I can feel it. They're gonna win, and I'm on early. I think that'll be all I have. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thank y'all for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Any constructive criticism is always appreciated. Make sure to check out Chobra on all his socials. He should currently be streaming at the Game Changers Championship over on his Twitch. Make sure to check that out. It's going to be a good tournament. And make sure to follow me, Twitter, Discord, same thing, Entree Interview. Thank y'all very much. Have a great day.